Hey, how's it going everyone? Jack here. Going to be doing some commentary over a 20 Shadowmoon Burial Grounds. The affixes for this week are Fortified, Spiteful, Grievous, and of course Thundering is the seasonal affix. Just going to go over kind of the pulls that I do and my thought process on playing the Protection Warrior here when going through this key. So we're going to start it up. This is, I would say, the easiest key out of all 8 keys in the pool currently. Pretty linear dungeon, and there's not really any scary pulls in this dungeon, I wouldn't say. But jumping into it here, some groups opt to skip this first pack here. They might shroud past it. I just pull it, so we're not really tight on time or anything. I do think these reanimated ritual bones are the scariest pack in the dungeon, to be honest. The Void Slashes do a lot of damage. You definitely want to make sure you have active mitigation up for those. And then if you need to, stunning those Void Slashes, just because they do a lot of damage. This pack, the double pack, isn't too bad, but definitely the pack with 3 of them in there is a lot more scary. But first pack, I mean, you have all your cooldowns up. Your damage dealers have their cooldowns up, so it's not too bad here. So now we're going to skip past this void spawn here. I don't like pulling these. You have to pull 2 of them towards the end of the dungeon here. But the void pulse does a ton of damage, especially on fort weeks. If you wait too long here, there is a void spawn that goes from one side to the other on the left and right sides. You might have to go to the right side if it appears on the left side if you are trying to skip the void spawns here. These guys don't really do a whole lot. Just make sure you move out of that cry of anguish on the ground. We like to pull the spiders in with this just to be a bit more time efficient as well here. So really just general protection warrior stuff. I'm trying to keep up shield block and ignore pain as much as I can, ideally 100% of the time. But as you can see, I'm in battle stance right now just because I'm not really worried about the damage I'm taking. I'm not feared for my life at all. Just trying to really pump out damage for myself, to be honest here. Pretty soon we're going to do some spiders here, and after that we'll get to what I think, for myself at least, is the scariest pack of the dungeon here, where you definitely have to rotate your cooldowns pretty well here. So just staying in battle stance for these spiders, burning them down, just trying to do as much AoE as I can here. Once I have sufficient threat, I'll move on to the next pack here. Make sure we get interrupts on the Bone Mender, of course, as much as possible here. So now these Void Slashes, that's what's really going to chunk us down here. Making sure we are focusing off the Bone Mender, making sure we get the interrupts when we can. And here we are going to start to use the cooldowns once, pretty soon here, just because our ignore pain, especially when they do it kind of one after the other here. So there's spell block. I do take spell block almost for all dungeons. It's definitely, like with spell block up, those Void Slashes are pretty minimal there. It's really huge, especially for a lot of boss fights as well. Spell block can be really clutch. But here, as you can see, 4 seconds left on spell block. These are almost dead, just coming down here. I do pop my wall as well. I don't really need it for the boss, so I thought might as well just play this safe, and we'll wall there. And that's pretty much that pull. After this, it's I would say the damage is a lot less coming in. But going into the first boss here, it is fortified week, so bosses are pretty easy. Definitely a lot easier than tyrannical, just like last week there. Coming in, I like to pull the boss towards the edge of this ring here, just so we can keep the daggers towards the edges here, so it's not going on top of any of the safe spaces when the boss goes to the middle here. And I just kind of drag him around the edge a little bit there. And I'm still in battle stance, as you can see. As a protection warrior, I do like to stay in battle stance as much as I can, just to pump out that extra damage. It's quite a bit of extra damage that you get from staying in battle stance. And I feel pretty comfortable doing this, even in 20 keys. It feels pretty good. So right now we're just swapping to that ad, killing that before it reaches the boss, going back onto the boss. And as you can see, the boss does have little stacks of this buff where it will do shadow damage. Each melee attack will do additional shadow damage. She gets 3 stacks there. You are able to spell reflect, and that does a bit of damage as well. So definitely try to use spell reflect when you see this buff. I forget the name of it there, but as you can see, after every melee attack, it will run down. So I did do a spell reflect there, reflecting some of that damage back, and then mitigating as you have that 20% mitigated magic damage from spell reflect as well while it's active. So here, if you are coordinated with your group, definitely try to hold Thundering as much as you can, as it is a good damage buff. It's definitely harder to do with pugs as you're not sure what their movement's going to be there, but if you're able to hold it longer, it's definitely a big plus. And this boss from now, it's kind of just rinse and repeat. On Tyrannical, it lasts a lot longer here. One thing, those ads that spawn, the Defiled Spirits, they used to give kill count even on the boss, but they did fix that, so they don't give kill count anymore, which It's probably how it was supposed to be anyway. I don't think those summoned ads on the boss were supposed to give any kill count there. So boss is almost dead here, just charging back to the middle, getting a bit of damage before I'm able to go back to the safe zone here. And boss is pretty much all dead. And what on this boss, it does hurt if you don't have any mitigation, if you don't have spell reflect up, it does hurt that buff that they get, buffing their melee attacks. So you probably want to use defensives there, but it's not really going to one-shot you there, especially on fortified weeks there. But that's where you'd kind of want to use defensive if you are getting a bit sketched out there, fearful for your life. So now moving on, this pack here, we have 3 mobs that are just going to keep channeling here. The Dominators, we want to keep them channeling as they don't do anything while they're channeling. I do interrupt the back one just so that we're able to group this one up with the other one since it is pretty far away. So now we're able to AoE everything and we can just keep Skull interrupted. That's the only ad that we have to actually focus interrupts on right now. And we are in comms together, so this is my regular key group that I run keys with, regular composition. So we're able to call out stuns and interrupts and whatnot, which really helps a lot for sure. Bit annoying with melee with a Spiteful this week. Spiteful definitely does quite a bit of damage. It'll chunk them down pretty quick there. People have to be on their toes about that. And then just being properly positioned if we're going on to the next pack, being on the other side of the mobs there, and then getting stuns, roots, and everything that we need there. As you can see, we just kill those Dominators. They don't really do much since they were just channeling here. And then we'll move on to the next pack here. And for this next pack, the Exhumers like to wait until they are close to each other. That way they don't spawn the ones kind of behind here in this area. Only the ones in front will spawn. And then here I'm marking them just so we can call kicks here. We have 4 Exhumed Spirits. We want to make sure we do get interrupts on the Death Blast as they'll pretty much one-shot. I think one actually gets off. And yeah, it does unfortunately kill the Hunter there. But make sure you get a nice AoE stun or fear for those is definitely best. And then just interrupts on the Exhumers. As these Void Bolts, they can do a lot, especially if it's not raging this week, but on weeks where it is raging, those will pretty much one-shot people when they get off. So definitely want to make sure if it's raging, you dispel those, but ideally just get as many interrupts as you can. And I use Omni CD to track my interrupts here, which really helps a lot, especially when I'm calling out interrupts. It helps a ton to know who has the interrupts out and who's able to use them next there. Now moving on to the next boss, if you go this way and kind of between these 2 runes, you can skip pulling any of these runes here for the mobs. I like to jump on top of this one, just because if you don't, the Exhumer in the next pack will pull this Exhumed Spirit. So I do like to jump on top of that with the boss just to get that out of the way, so we don't have any weird Death Blasts come out kind of after this boss here. And now Void Blast, like to spell reflect that. It doesn't actually reflect it, but decreases magic damage taken, which is always good. This boss, it doesn't really hurt a whole lot. I think where people might die is when the boss steals your soul and they're not able to kill their ad fast enough, but usually that's not too big of an issue here. As you can see, we're still on battle stance here, just pumping away. Gonna switch to our soul here, and my cooldowns are up again, so just using that on the boss and on the soul just to burn it down quickly. It's not really dealing too much damage to us, so it doesn't matter too much here. And then the boss kind of just stays still for a while, does this channel, and then we'll do another channel for a bit, and we just gotta dodge stuff on the ground. Not really a whole lot to worry about, to be honest, on this boss. Pretty easy boss in general. And here's the Void Devastation, where you just gotta move out of things on the ground here. So as long as you dodge stuff, literally no damage outgoing. So I'm just pumping, our healer's just pumping. And after this, we'll rinse and repeat. Just make sure after this you are facing the boss away from your group, just so that they don't get hit by the frontal. That's going to be up and coming soon here. And I do have bad placement of my DBM bars here. I should definitely move that to the side here. But I like them kind of being underneath my main action bars at the bottom here, but definitely to the side. Should move those somewhere else. And here we go. Boss is almost dead. We might get, I think we get one more soul steal before we actually get into the next pack here. And I could probably actually just tank in through that planar shift there. I don't think it'd be too bad. Here we go, just killing the soul. Move on to the next pack. In the next pack, we do have an Exhumer, which we want to keep interrupted. That's the only thing we really need interrupts on. There's going to be 2 dominators as well. But again, if you just keep those channeling, they won't do anything. You just have to tell, if you're playing with pugs, just tell people not to do any AoE interrupts, stuns, or anything or on those dominators there. Just keep them channeling and then it'll be fine. And just focus the interrupts on the exhumer. So since we did kill that one spirit before, right with the boss, when we pull the boss there, we don't get a death blast going off in the back. If you didn't do that, then the exhumer would summon that one. So just be aware of that. And just pumping, I'm checking to see where the other exhumer is, as I do want to pull that. I believe we need that for the kill count there. So once it gets a bit closer, I'll be pulling that, and I'll be interrupting it inwards. But this pack's just about dead anyway. Exhume spirits, there's no spirits nearby to exhume. I get the interrupt on that, pulling him back, but all the ads there, pretty much already dead. So now I'm just preparing, getting myself in position to go to the next pack. There's going to be those spiders and bats there. Just getting interrupts on the void bolts, and with stunning the shades, just doing whatever we can to help out with our group. The shades do a lot of damage if they attack them, so doing what we can to get them off of our group here. And here we go. Gonna die here, and I like to get the interrupt on the spider on this next pack. You definitely want to get the interrupt on the spider. If you don't get the interrupt on the spider, it does an AoE, big AoE dot that will likely wipe your raid. Wipe your group in high keys here. Does a lot of damage. So right now, just pumping AoE, making sure we get interrupts on the spider. I did assign interrupts to the bats as well, but if their cast gets off, it's not really a huge deal. Yeah, heal can usually heal through it pretty well there. People are just slowed, which is a bit annoying, but it's not too bad. As you can see we're holding Thundering for a bit here, just get that damage increase and then clearing it a bit towards the end. But yeah, these pulls, as long as you get the interrupt on the spider, really, they're not too bad. Like, there's not a whole lot really going on here. You got some spiderlings here. I just like to make sure I get threat on these before completely moving on to the next pack. As sometimes, especially if you're playing in pugs, DPS can just go in. Sometimes they even pull for you, but sometimes they go in and then just blast right away without any threat being gotten. So here we go, 2 of these spiders doing the AoEs. Just make sure you get the interrupts and then you're all good to go here. And as a tank, I do like to get as many of the interrupts and stuns and whatnot as I can, just so I can allow my DPS players to just pump and not have to use a global on interrupts or any of the resources on interrupts or stuns or anything like that there. So I do like to get as many of the interrupts and stuns as I can here. And to save time, if you wanted to, you could probably drag this guy into the next pack, into the worm and the bats there. That wouldn't really be an issue there. But again, we weren't tight on time at all. And it was a really smooth run so far. So just take it a bit chill here. So going to these worms here, the worms do a body slam that will be targeted at you. So I like to make sure my worm is facing away from the group as much as possible. So make sure you dodge the body slam. We're going to group the bats up with this worm here. And then there we go. Just make sure we get AoE stuns, AoE fear and whatnot on a lot of the spits, especially if they're spitting at the same time. You can just do an AoE stun or fear. I had my fear there, as you can see, and then it'll just interrupt them. And then apart from that, just getting interrupts. If you don't have any AoEs left, just getting the interrupts there. Again, we are on comm, so I'm able to call out the AoE stuns, call out leg sweep, call out roar for the druid here, which really helps a lot. Otherwise, if you have a lot of plague spits going out, that can be a bit sketchy there. So here we go. We do have the healer dying, I believe, to one of the shades that popped out. And just popped in, I think almost one shot him. Maybe 2 of the shades went on him. We do have some deaths here, unfortunately. Just to the shades. That's Spiteful. So really got to keep the affix of the weak in mind and then play accordingly. So we're without a healer here. Not really too worried. Still managing to keep alive pretty well. Gonna kill these. I think our hunter will B-res the healer here. We don't really see that we'd need the B-res for the rest of the dungeon, so save some time. Our monk did res. And now we got one more worm. Easy worm now, just gotta dodge body slam, and that's pretty much it. Again, pointing the body slam away from the group there, so the group's gonna stand on that one side of the bridge over here. I like to stand over here, more towards the boss here. And then just dodging that. And then remember, if you're playing with a druid healer, stand in the efflorescence, just the green on the ground, as much as possible there. Can be a bit hard sometimes, especially if you have to kite, you have to take mobs away, but as much as you can, stand in that efflow. Especially if they have that 4-piece, it helps them a ton. Since it's fortified, this worm just takes a little bit to kill here, but pretty easy mob. I don't think you can skip these anymore. I think you used to be able to kind of in beta, but I believe they patched it so you're not able to skip the worms currently there. So worm's almost dead. I am popping some DPS cooldowns here just because the boss will die pretty quickly since it's 4th week here. For this boss, we want to make sure that your range is baiting the pools. It's going to be pools that the boss spawns where when he does inhale, you got to stand in them. Make sure your ranged healer, your ranged DPS is baiting the pools into melee here. I think they actually aren't right now. So yeah, they should be standing here just so all the melee are able to attack the boss while inhale is happening. So now if they're not, we do need to move out, and then now we're just doing heroic throw on the boss. That's kind of all we can do without being sucked in there. And after this, boss will do a body slam, and spawn adds, it'll do a body slam as well here. The DPS just want to kill the adds here, and then you can just stay on the boss. Once he does inhale, you can help out with the adds as well. I got hit by a body slam, which that was a mistake on my end. Just watch out for the stuff on the ground here. Now DPS is going, we're going to kill the adds here. Going to stay on the boss, tanking the boss here. There's the inhale, so now we can help on the adds and damage them down there. Yeah, overall, especially when the adds are down, pretty easy fight. Just dodge body slam, stand in the pools for inhale, and that's pretty much it. There we go. We did lust this pull. Honestly, on Fort, we should probably save lust for the last 2 packs of the dungeon. The voids there, as their void pulse, as you'll see in a bit, does a lot of damage. But we lusted this just to get this done, as this boss fight can drag on a little bit, especially on Tyrannical, just because the worm does keep going down and whatnot. But it can last for quite a while there. So we just lusted this guy, as we weren't too worried about deaths in the future after this guy here. Yeah, just make sure you're standing in that pool. When the inhale happens, and just pumping. And again, we're just staying in battle stance here. I think this should be... we might have one more time when the boss goes down. As you can see, it is a bit of a longer boss fight for sure. With the adds and then with the boss going down there. I'm going to pop some of our cooldowns here again. In most pulls, I'm able to use my avatar with Demo Shout and just use it as pretty much a damage cooldown. There are certain bosses, such as like 3rd boss of Temple of the Jade Serpent, where I will hold my Demo Shout and not use it for the damage and use it more for the mitigation. But for the most part, in majority of pulls, I can just use it with avatar and just get some big burst damage out of there. There we go, boss dying here. Moving on to the next pack, we have 2 bats and 2 spiders, so making sure that we just get interrupts. Ideally, if you're able to assign interrupts, it makes it a lot easier here. I just have hotkeys for my target markers where I'm able to just put the markers onto them pretty easily there. And this pack is really easy as long as you get interrupts there. The bats, they should cast a bit more than you're able to interrupt, but you can supplement that with stuns and whatnot, and again, even if the casts go out, it's not too bad there. So right now, towards the end of the pack, you want to make sure DPS do hold cooldowns for the next pack, as the void spawns, especially on Fort, are really going to hurt. So now, as you saw, I just stunned for that shade, just give him a bit more time to run away from that shade there. Make sure we get that interrupt. And perfect. And the group's going to be positioned towards the stairs, just running away from the shades there. They don't want to be caught on the other side. So now you're going to want to focus down one of the void spawns and just kill it down as fast as possible. Again, you probably want to save lust for this. Probably helps a fair bit here. Here we go. Just going to pop our damage cooldowns. So we're not really at risk of dying here. It's mainly just AoE damage on the group. Just trying to get this down as quick as possible. I did pop a rallying shout there, which I think probably saved the rogue there. He dropped pretty low. So do remembering that you do have rally, and that can really help. It is only 15% health, I think 19 to 20% if you talent into it, but it can actually make the difference, especially in these kind of big AoE situations here. Once one of these void spawn dies, it definitely gets a lot easier. There's, half the void pulses that go out, which are nice. Void pulses, I believe, are force desynced, so you'll never have two of them going off at the exact same time. I think Blizz did that just so people don't get completely ganked by them. But even having one after another, it definitely hurts. It's hard for the healer to keep people up, as you can see, he's pumping there. And the rogue does go down there. And we do have Grievous as well, remember, for this week, so that's going to be another added pressure on the healer while all this AoE is going out. People getting taken down by Grievous as well, so definitely tough there. Now, killing this Shade, as we do want to get the res on the rogue, and then just going back down into the last boss room here. We have tons of time, as you can see. I mean, we didn't really do any ridiculous pulls or anything. We still have 12 minutes left, so even a lot of time to get this as a 2 chest. And once everyone's here, we're going to be pulling. Make sure as a tank you are watching your healer mana. I liked having the resources below the player frames here, just so I can watch the healer mana and make sure if your healer is getting before a fight, make sure you just take a second, let your healer drink, and you can pull. You can pull while your healer is drinking as well, as long as they're fine with that. For this fight, we do have our hunter baiting kind of the purple circles out in the ring here. As long as he baits, we do have the healer in the middle, but as long as he's out there baiting, then they'll just go to him. That'll be fine. Right now, we do see our monk does die to the wall here. So they did fix this wall. Previously, you'd be able to live the wall. So you could go towards the opposite end of the wall and then just let the wall hit you and it wouldn't do that damage, but they buffed the damage that it does by a lot. So you're not able to do that any longer. If you get ticked by the wall, you're probably going to die, even if you have defensives. So really make sure that you don't get hit by the wall. So things like charge, I think Windwalker Monk has an ability where they dash towards their target as well. I think it's when they press one of their main abilities too. So just make sure about anything like that where you're charging towards the skeletons on the wall, you're being really careful, as sometimes it can put you kind of inside the wall when you do that charge there, and it can get a little bit sketchy. We're moving boss on top of the Ritual Bones just to get a bit of cleave in. Can make Malevolence a bit tricky to dodge, but it's usually not too bad. Just as you can see, that one, that's probably the worst you can get. The boss just points it right down the middle there, but it's not bad. You just go to the side, then you're fine. On for it, should be a lot of time. Hunter does get clipped by the wall there, and I don't think we have any more battle reses out. This means the Druid has to go and bait on the purple circles around here. As you can see, we are keeping the boss away from the circles. They do increase damage if you're closer to them. You don't have to be ridiculously far across the room, but just don't be ridiculously close to them either. And as you can see, our healer is baiting the circles there. And we do have to clear our Thundering. And we want to choose the Ritual Bones that are away from those circles on the ground. Otherwise, you'll be taking more damage. If you try to kill this one here, then it's going to be a lot more damage since it's going on top of the circle on the ground there. I don't really like killing the one off to the side, but if it's going to decrease damage by a fair bit, then go for it. Just the one on the side, you have less time to actually kill it, just because, yeah, how the circle works there. It'll hit the end of the wall there as opposed to a bit further back. Here we go. Boss is almost dead here. On Tyrannical, if you had one person dead, that might be a wipe. You might not be able to kill the wall there, but on Fortified, it's still pretty easy to get that wall done. And as you can see, we're still staying in battle stance. I think the only time we actually switched to defensive stance this whole dungeon was at the mobs in the beginning that did Void Slash. But apart from that, we're just staying in battle stance and just pumping. Nothing else is really hitting us very hard there. Here we go. We're gonna kill. We might be able to get away with just killing the boss, but gonna kill Ritual Bones just to be safe here. We have lots of time even to get a 2 chest here. Well, right now Druid's baiting again. Watching Malevolence, and boss is pretty much dead. So that's the key. That's 20 Shadowmoon Burial Grounds. Hopefully you got a bit of insight on how I go about kind of the pulls It's a pretty linear dungeon, and you don't really need to do a whole lot of weird pulls and different skips and whatnot to time it. You can kind of just run through, and you should be fine as long as you play pretty clean. So thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you learned something there, and I'll see you in the next one.